Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Well, as the new school year begins, many parents will be looking for grinds for their children. Every year, maths is one of the most highly sought-after grinds, and my next guest, TJ Hegarty, has developed an online maths grinds business which focuses on an alternative way of teaching the subject. TJ, we'll be discussing the success of Breakthrough Maths, but first, I'd like to hear how you came to starting this business.
Good morning, Carl. Pleasure to be here. It's an interesting, varied background to how I got into maths. It's a bit of a long road. I'm a farmer's son. I actually studied agricultural science at university in UCD. I worked in Kerry Group for almost 4 years. I'm working in sales and enjoyed that. But I was always teaching maths kind of locally in my village. And I ended up kind of falling in love with it. And particularly one student, Phil McCarthy, who has autism. And I ended up teaching him for over 5 or 6 years. And we ended up making the front of the Irish Examiner 4th of September last year, 2021. And Fiona ended up getting 480 points as a leaving cert and a H3 in maths. And it was one of the sparks to set up Breakthrough Maths. And I started it small. And today we're growing. So we're kind of at about hoping to teach about 1,000 students a week this year.
So, as we settle back into the new school year, parents and students may be considering maths grinds. But while grinds are often associated with exam students, Breakthrough Maths also offers a service for primary school kids.
I think the plates are shifting, right? Like, we actually have most of our students are from third year down, and our actual most attended classes are primary school classes. It's just a shift in kind of mindsets too. Like, obviously COVID has an impact, and once you kind of go backwards in maths of all subjects, it's hard. Like, it's hard to try and catch up again. And if you fall back in maths, that can bring back the rest of your other subjects as well. And it really affects confidence. When you're doing bad at maths and you got to do maths every single day in school, it can bring you down. You know, it's not easy. So demand actually for maths grinds from about third year down right into fifth class primary school is where we see demand coming for our classes.
And are you saying that this shift is really being driven by the interruption to education brought about by COVID?
Definitely that's been the spark, but it also makes sense for it to do it. Like, maths is probably a core subject along with kind of English, and it takes the most time, the most effort, and parents and students alike are thinking about, like, look, maths creates opportunities, and you think about where the world is going, yeah? Engineering, computer science, data science, these are the careers of the future, and these require maths. Maths is a fundamental part of this, and, like, if you're struggling in maths or if you're going backwards in maths, it can limit your opportunities as well. And I guess people are thinking about that too when they're looking at getting maths at a younger age.
So is the deep-rooted problem in this the fact that there's such a perception that maths is just a difficult subject?
Yeah, it is what I see. Like, it's easy enough to pinpoint a scapegoat of lack of teaching hours and lack of support or lack of or the curriculum, which do have knock-on effects, don't get me wrong. But when you see what's happening across the globe and other students really struggling on it, you're just realising that, oh yeah, maths actually is an extremely difficult subject. And it just takes extra time. That's really it. If it's from a student in Ireland to a student in Singapore to a student in England or Dubai or wherever, they just need extra time at maths. Simple as practice to make perfect.
So you talk about your approach all being focused on getting the student to enjoy the subject. So how do you achieve that?
Some of it's kind of psychological, really. In fact, almost all of it's psychological. Like, we hire younger tutors, so we would hire kind of people who achieved 600 plus points, would all be in universities in Dublin and Cork. So they're maybe 3 or 4 years out of college and are in college out of doing the leaving cert. They can kind of associate them, so they're not older, they're kind of the same age. For the younger years and stuff, for primary schools and first years, we'd introduce Kahoot. So it's like a quiz at the end of the classes, gets people a bit competitive, and they really enjoy it. But the most important thing we do is the classes are small. So, like, we have an approach where the students lead the class and not the teacher. And that sounds like completely contradictory, but it makes sense. It's all about the students engaging and driving the lesson in the class, you know. There's no point as teachers sitting in front of a Zoom screen and just talking, is there? They just go to sleep. So we kind of keep the classes 6 or 7 in a class. The kids come in and they get stuck into questions, and the kids lead the questions. So you might learn from mistake from another student, or be like, oh, I never saw we could do it that way. That's how you drive engagement in maths.
So talk to us about your engagement with the parent then, let's say pre-grind and post-grind.
every parent gets a WhatsApp message with a video in there explaining how we operate and how our classes run. We call all our parents, and the kids do the lesson. Afterwards, we'll send another WhatsApp message to parents with links to pay and stuff like that. And simple as look, like all these are kind of systems. The most important thing is the face behind it. Yeah, we're trying to grow at scale, but we're trying to keep our classes small, and we're trying to make sure that every parent talks to us and knows exactly what's happening. That's the most important thing, that their child achieves their best and they know who to talk to and who's getting the grinds. Simple as.
And how do you get an understanding of what the issues are facing individual students from a maths perspective?
It's difficult, eh? So, like, when students come into the grinds and they get a feel for that for a couple of weeks, then after 4 or 5 weeks, we're going to talk to the actual individual themselves, talk to the tutor and talk to the parent, because we have a head of education, Shane O'Connell, who's over 20 years experience as a principal and teacher in both Cork and Galway, and he'll actually reach out to every one of the parents and students individually and say, hey, how are you actually getting on? How are things going? And whether we need to make changes to bring a student back to a different class, maybe a slower paced class, or maybe they're missing a fundamental gap in learning. I don't know, maybe they're missing a part of algebra. Then we'll step away and do that with them and return them to the group grinds. That's how we do it. We let them get settled in, and then we just monitor them every couple of weeks to make sure, hey, are we definitely get the most here of the grinds.
Now, of course, Maths Grinds is a very competitive space, and your competition are mainly individual students. So how do you compete with them from a price and service offering perspective?
Well, considering I probably was one of those students myself kind of doing it on the side, like, it's a complete different offering. Like, I mean, we put standards of quality in place, and like every one of our tutors achieved over 600 points. Every one of our tutors is trained by us, Garda vetted. They've gone through a whole summer of training with us. They all have 2+ years experience. We have a head of education who checks in every single week with the tutors on each class that's recorded, and we're checking with the parents and the students themselves. It's been completely comprehensive with everything. There's no other one-to-one grind with a student that goes to the comprehensiveness that we do. So we are going at scale for sure, but we set it up in a way that it's completely personalized, that ultimately our mark of success is that did your child achieve their best potential in maths? Simple as. And that's how we judge ourselves, and that's how we set up our system.
So when you induct a new tutor, talk to us about the training that you provide to them before they're involved in actually providing grinds.
It's actually 3 interviews before we ever do anything. And they go through 3 levels, including myself at the last interview. And then we actually do a mock class. So they'll actually come and teach a class for us before we ever hire them. So straight away we can see, this person has the energy, the drive, and the passion for maths. And then we kind of work over the summer with them, getting familiar with the level of notes we do and the standard notes we have. And then we practice over summer, doing different trial classes with students over summer and doing different small classes. And at that stage, by September, these guys are flying and ready to teach.
So how do you measure the results of the grinds offered by Breakthrough Maths?
It's difficult. There's no answer. And I'm not going to come on and tell you there is, because there's no standardization in terms of testing of the students. Now, we're actually rolling out this year Kahoot quizzes at the end of our classes and every 6 weeks into our classes. So we will get some grading on students after a couple of weeks and do it periodically. It's something that we're looking at going forward, especially because there's one little trick that we're kind of missing is like, hey, if we can get some data on our students, we'll have better feedback to go, but that's quite complex. At the moment, because it's kind of still small and because the classes are so small, Carl, when you've only 5 or 6 in a class, you can readily identify by the tutors themselves saying, hey, the student is struggling, we can help them here. So that's how we'll do it at the moment, kind of by person to person. But as we scale data and using kind of technology to test kids is where we're going to be at.
And TJ, from a growth perspective, what are your plans for Breakthrough Maths over the next 2 to 3 years?
We're starting in England, and there's a massive opportunity to scale, like a huge opportunity to scale, because our service is like no other in terms of that engagement, that personalization, and using technology to scale. So it's all there for us. But I am cautious initially of just trying to making sure the service is perfect for every one of our students this year. So this year, our one goal is just to teach 1,000 students in a given academic week in small classes. And that will take huge effort on all our ends. If you think about it, we have 35 tutors and we're teaching over 112 classes a week, right? And And that's gonna take a lot of effort. So we're just focusing on that to teach 1,000 students in a given academic week, start in England, and then let's see where we are after that next year.
Excellent. Okay, well, final question for you this morning, TJ, is in relation to looking for you to provide advice to parents and students that are listening this morning. What tips can you give them in terms of how to improve their understanding of maths?
Here's a very tiny one. One of the most important things that in any subject, right, and something that we coined, is to think in ink. And what think in ink means is just get writing. So it's never to get reading things and just sitting back horizontally reading things and looking over questions. It's to get active, to get writing, because you remember almost twice as much when you write something as when you just read it. And maths is just about getting stuck in it and start easy and start at the bottom and work your way upwards. And if you need help on a weekly basis, go get it. Like, practice. Don't wait for the last 6 weeks of school after Easter until the exams. It just causes too much anxiety, too much pressure. Get the help on a weekly basis, get practicing, and the grades turn and the confidence turns.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was TJ Hegarty from Breakthrough Maths, and we wish TJ and the team every continued success.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast.